Now, on the Georgia vote, power couple. The board that regulates Georgia energy rates gets a jolt from two Democrats.
Off and running. The stakes are high in Georgia as candidates for governor make their case. We hear from 5 of them in this half hour and break down a new poll showing who's out front early.
And we sit down one-on-one with former Georgia Senator and current member of the Trump administration, Kelly Loeffler, all right now on the Georgia Vote.
From the 11 Alive studios, this is the Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Good morning and welcome in. It was another big week in Georgia politics. This week, 2 big storylines. The government shutdown is now the longest in United States history. And here in Georgia, we had an election.
That's right. Atlanta's Mayor Andre Dickens cruising to re-election as city voters give him another 4 years. And state Democrats, they are celebrating as Alicia Johnson and Peter Hubbard flipped 2 seats on the Public Service Commission. Republicans, they still hold a 3-2 advantage on that state utility board, but Democrats are no longer shut out here. We'll talk about the election night fallout with our panel in just a few minutes. We are also now 40 days into the government shutdown, the longest such impasse in U.S. history. The FAA is taking steps to reduce air traffic, to relieve pressure on air traffic controllers who are working at this point without pay. Hartsfield-Jackson is one of 40 airports that will see a reduction in flights, which could lead to cancellations and delays. Republicans and Democrats, they have not wavered. Both sides think they're right here. Well, this week, 2 members of Georgia's congressional delegation, one Democrat and one Republican, weighed in.
It's a false choice to say that people should have to choose between reopening the government, putting food on their table, or keeping their health care costs low. And I am here to say that it's a false choice, and I'll continue to fight for all of the above.
This is the longest shutdown of all time, and it's over a clean CR. Everything that's in the clean CR is what the Democrats have voted for previously. Everything that's in the CR, I'm going to repeat that because I want to make sure everybody knows this. The CR is clean.
And we will continue our conversation about the shutdown a little later. And our conversation with Kelly Loeffler, the head of the Small Business Administration appointed by President Trump. You'll hear from the former Georgia senator in about 10 minutes.
With Tuesday's elections in the rearview mirror, major contests on the ballot next year are now coming into even sharper focus. One of the biggest is the race to become Georgia's next governor. We spoke to 5 leading candidates Wednesday night outside the AJC's Politically Georgia Candidate Forum, where former State Senator Jason Estevez threw some of the earliest jabs of the Democratic primary.
We're going to have to focus on the issues, which means nominating a candidate like me that does not have the baggage that my primary opponents do.
What baggage are you referring to there?
Well, look, when I think about a former mayor who abandoned the city at a time of crisis.
You're talking about Keisha Lance Bottoms there.
And decided not to run for re-election. Or a lieutenant governor who spent the last decade pushing a dangerous abortion ban that has killed multiple black women.
We talked to former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms not long after Estevez made those comments. How do you respond to that criticism from a fellow Democrat in this primary?
Yeah, that's really rich coming from someone who's quit twice in the middle of his term. So I didn't abandon the city of Atlanta. I completed my term, leaving the city with $180 million in the bank, didn't raise property taxes.
Jeff Duncan, the former lieutenant governor, Estevez also criticized he backed Georgia's so-called heartbeat bill when he was in office. The bill bans abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. Duncan was a Republican at the time of his support, but he has since switched parties, and since doing that, he's changed his stance and told us in an interview earlier this year he would work to restore the Roe v. Wade framework if elected.
I got the issue of abortion wrong, and I'm able to admit that. I was wrong to think a room full of legislators knew better than millions of women.
A former Republican now running for governor as a Democrat, we asked Duncan Wednesday night how he plans to convince primary voters this transformation is sincere. Do you think you have to overcome a credibility problem with some of these primary voters?
Just got to continue to earn people's trust and be honest with them. Talk about my political transformation. You know, some folks talk about me, have you lost your mind, Jeff? I said, no, I found my heart.
Also in the mix is former DeKalb County CEO Mike Thurmond, who, like all of the candidates we talked to Wednesday night, pointed to the issue of affordability as a key focus of his campaign. How do you differentiate yourself from this crowded field?
we can all make promises, politicians do. This campaign will be more about performance than promises. I've already reduced costs for people who have elected me. In DeKalb County, I passed legislation that is generating $1.6 billion in tax relief for DeKalb County homeowners.
Attorney General Chris Carr, a Republican, echoed that message when asked about big Democratic wins in statewide elections this week here in Georgia and in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia. How do those results impact the way you are looking at framing your campaign moving forward? Do they change anything for you?
It doesn't, because this is what we've been telling folks, that candidate quality matters, affordability issues matter, and you're going to want, particularly in Georgia in 2026, you're going to want somebody that understands kitchen table issues.
Now, in that Republican primary, Carr faces Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who did not attend the candidate forum, and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who did not join us for an interview.
Well, it's time now for our political roundtable. We have lots to talk about. And today joining us at the table, Devin Barrington Ward, a progressive community organizer, political activist, and managing director of the Black Futurists Group. Stephen Lawson is a Republican communications strategist who served as a senior communications advisor to House Speaker John Burns. He's also worked for Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones and Congressman Mike Collins. And Shannon McCaffrey, who leads the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's team that covers the state capitol. She is a veteran political reporter, all returning panelists. Thank you all so much for being here. And speaking of the AJC, let's start with the poll that you all did with the University of Georgia on these gubernatorial candidates. We're going to start with the Democrats. If we could pull up the results here. This was of 1,000 likely primary voters. You see former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms at the top there, followed by Michael Thurman, the former DeKalb CEO, and then Jeff Duncan, Jason Estevez. You can see the list goes on. But also take a look at that bottom number, undecided voters, 40%. So after listening to those wonderful interviews that Zach got, looking at this poll, Devin, what is your first thoughts?
I'm not super surprised by the poll, the fact that there's 40% of people who are undecided. Just because there are some names that are big in this primary field, there are others who are not. And I think primary voters are right to be undecided. I would call myself one of those undecided primary voters myself. And I think it's because, one, folks have not really done a good job in that field yet of articulating the issues that really motivated folks to vote for the two Democrats that won the Public Service Commission seat, which is this issue of affordability and what they plan to do about it. And so I think voters in the Democratic primary and voters in general, as we move towards the primaries and the general election, are looking for candidates that are going to speak directly to those issues that they're talking about all the time. I speak with folks at the barbershop before I came here today.
It's that messaging.
And it's that messaging around affordability.
And I can say in every one of those conversations we had, and Shannon, I'm sure that happened on the stage at the candidate forum too, affordability. Yep. You heard it from the Democrats and from the Republicans. Shannon, let's bring you in on this, because this poll was taken before those PSC results, the election results came out. Mm-hmm. But how much do you think a poll like this shakes up a contested and crowded primary field inside those campaign war rooms?
Yeah, so it was interesting. We wanted to get a sense of the horse race. So we had to do a separate Republican and Democratic poll so we could really look at the likely voters in each of those primaries. I don't think the results were incredibly surprising. I think you hit it on the head with the number of undecideds. That means for everyone out there, for all those Democratic candidates, they have room to grow. And we really haven't seen the ad war start yet. We haven't seen any of those sort of biographical ads come out, sort of introducing the candidates. So I think probably in January, people are going to be sprinting to the primary.
And let's look at the other side of the aisle with the poll of 1,000 likely Republican voters. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones actually took 21.7% of this poll. Brad Raffensperger at 15.1%, Chris Carr 7.2%, Clark Dean 1%. And then undecided, once again, a big number, 55%. Stephen, what is your thoughts on this?
Yeah, more undecided certainly on the Republican side at this point. I still think the Lieutenant Governor is the front runner in that race, as you all have covered. He has the endorsement of President Donald Trump. I think that will be a huge boost. I think over the coming months, you will probably see him tout that endorsement more because you know the power that carries in a Republican primary. But on the Democrat side, I have to disagree a little bit. I was floored that Keisha Lance Bottoms was at 40%, and the next closest person, Michael Thurmond, was at 11%.
Even with her name recognition.
Even then, because unless something drastically changes in that race, it is going to be very difficult for somebody to overcome. It's going to be very, very difficult for an alternative to the former mayor for Democrats to consolidate around that.
Devin?
I think Mayor Bottoms has a lot of baggage, and because of that, that is going to lead to folks being able to look at her more critically as we get closer to the primary. And it will be up to her opponents to exploit or leverage that baggage to bring her numbers down. But I do think that it's incredibly early. And again, as someone who is an observer and will be voting in the primary, I am undecided. And I'm undecided largely because I don't think that Keisha Lance Bottoms should be the nominee, because I don't think that she will be as strong of a candidate in the general. But I do think that the other candidates have to prove, and that's why primaries are important. This is the opportunity for them to really sharpen their message and show that they're going to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Republicans in November, who will be backed by Donald Trump.
And like Mike Thurmond said, I believe in an earlier interview, the polls don't vote, people do, so we will see how that happens in the primary. Stay with us. Our interview with Small Business Administration head Kelly Loeffler, that's coming up next.
This week, the federal government shutdown entered record-breaking territory, officially becoming the longest in American history. Kelly Loeffler, a Republican, former Georgia senator, now serves in President Donald Trump's cabinet, leading the Small Business Administration. We talked with her this week about the shutdown. In past shutdown conversations, the president has played a pretty prominent role in trying to broker a deal, and being really at the center, the pivot point of negotiations. At least publicly, we haven't seen as much of that from President Trump through this saga so far. You're in the cabinet. Where is the president on this ongoing shutdown debate?
Well, I think the president was very clear at our cabinet meeting that came within about a week of the shutdown. And we talked about this very openly. It was clear that Democrats were going to exact as much pain out of the American people as they could. And the president said, we can do two things. We can make this pain less, or we can make it painful. He instructed all of us to make it as painless as possible. And that was his commitment to getting the troops paid, not once, but twice. Now another payday is coming up. They may miss that because we are truly running out of funding. They made a partial payment on WIC, being able to find some of the funding. But what's happening is completely at the hands of Senate Democrats. The president wants this country open. He wants to minimize the pain. He's asked all of us to do that.
And I hate to cut you off, but the president and some folks in his administration have also openly talked about ratcheting up the pain on blue seats, blue districts, blue cities in the country.
Well, we have a situation where funding has been cut off in the government. There's something called the Anti-Deficiency Act. You can't spend money we don't have. The government has not been funded because Senate Democrats will not fund the government right now. We're all bearing the cost of this, and it's at the hands of Senate Democrats.
If there's been one consistency through this entire saga, this record-setting saga, it has been both parties placing all the blame on the other. Is there anything, any inch of daylight, any inch of movement that you think your party should make to help get a deal done?
Well, I think Leader Thune is doing it in the Senate. He's reaching out to moderate Democrats in the Senate, asking if they can come over and have conversations. I heard just yesterday that Minority Leader Schumer was not allowing that to happen. So I know that those conversations are happening. I've been in the Senate. I know there's quiet conversations that happen all the time. That's the nature of the Senate. But that's simply not being allowed now that they've moved the goalposts again to make it about politics.
And that is just a part of our conversation. You can see our full interview, including how Loeffler says the shutdown is harming small business owners, in our full interview streaming right now on 11 Alive Plus. And we are back now with our political roundtable. As always, a lot to talk about here. And let's start with this, because 2026, the Senate race, the Republican Senate primary, is coming into focus too. And there's a new campaign ad from the group Hardworking Georgians. That's the name of them. The ad is on behalf of Senate candidate Republican Derek Dooley. Take a look at this.
What do Mike Collins, Buddy Carter, and John Ossoff have in common? They all failed and shut down the government. It's what happens when you send career politicians to D.C. To change Washington, we need an outsider. Derek Dooley for U.S. Senate.
That is a Republican candidate criticizing other Republicans about the shutdown. Stephen, how is this all going to play?
I think that there are, obviously, when you get into a primary situation, you know that the attacks are going to come based on someone's background or record. I just don't think that this is probably the best line of attack. I don't know that, one, it works in a Republican primary, but two, it's also antithetical to everything that the president has said, Leader Thune has said, Speaker Johnson has said, and virtually every Republican has said, is that this is a Democrat shutdown. So I thought the ad was a little off, but again, this is crazy times and crazy world in Georgia politics.
Can I follow up, and Devin, I'll let you get in here too. Do you think that it, though, could resonate with people who are feeling the pressure? Marjorie Taylor Greene this week in an interview, I believe it was with Tia Mitchell from the AJC, said, how are people campaigning right now and not at work? How can they be trying to get their next job when they're not even doing their current job? I feel like the ad kind of plays on that a little bit. And do you think that that could resonate with the voter?
I don't, because people aren't working in Washington because Senate Democrats are holding the government up, including John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. Again, this has been a consistent theme. Every Republican in the General Assembly in this state wrote a letter to Senators Warnock and Ossoff asking them to reopen the government. They didn't send it to the Republican congressional district. So again, we are in this position because Senate Democrats are holding the government up. They are shutting the government down. And that's what's happening.
Yeah, there's a disassociation from reality. The fact of the matter is that people on the ground see that the Republicans have the White House, they have a majority in the Senate, they have a majority in the House, they have the courts, they have the keys. And so this idea of trying to make this very technical argument about a Senate rule holding up whether or not people get their full SNAP benefits, whether or not the FAA is able to pay their folks, and we don't have to sit in long lines at the airport, it is squarely on the Republicans. If they want to change the Senate rule, they absolutely can. Now, this argument around, oh, it will be used against us in the future, well, then I think that's motivation to deliver for the American people so that you all get reelected back to being the majority. But they've recognized that the blame is squarely on them, and there hasn't been really a vehicle that they've been able to assess on how to get out of this situation.
And Devin,
and people are not buying the blame
we're a little
that
short
Democrats.
on time. Yeah. This is a microcosm of this conversation we've been seeing between Democrats and Republicans for a long time now. Shannon, 30 seconds to you. The last word, the question we get the most, how does this all end?
Oh boy, throw the curveball at me. I will say this. I think this ad shows two things. I think it shows that Derek Dooley is running not against Mike Collins and Buddy Carter. He's running against Washington. Mm-hmm. In our poll, we found incredibly low approval ratings for Congress. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to run against Washington as an outsider. The second thing this shows is the benefit of running with a supporter like Brian Kemp. It's his committee that is funded this ad. And so you're going to see more like this, that money that he doesn't even have to raise that's going to help him.
Definitely a big supporter there. Shannon, thank you so much. And thank you to our panel for this. We'll have an extended panel on YouTube. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Well, welcome in. It is 7 o'clock in Georgia. Polls are starting to close.
But at the end of the day, you have to look at what the voters are saying, and the numbers are showing what the voters are saying.
What's it like to be in the room? What conversations are happening when your candidate is maybe not off to a great start?
Not everybody wins.
And our team coverage of this Decision 2025 election night continues. We have Joe Ripley. He is joining us live now from the city of Atlanta.
But one person who's actually monitoring them on the ground is 11 Alive's Galat Malamed, joining us live from Milton, covering the PSC races for us, Galat.
I looked up to mayors like Mayor Maynard Jackson and Andrew Young.
Well, that was just a small look at our election night live streaming coverage on 11 Alive Plus. We were on the air from 7 o'clock to just after 10 o'clock Tuesday night, and a whole lot to cover, Faith.
That's right, and so many of you joined us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our coverage is still available to watch on 11 Live Plus if you want to recap or if you want to watch it for the first time. You'll hear from our analysts, from our Politics Roundtable, and our live reports from the City of Atlanta, South Fulton, and the Public Service Commission races. And by the way, the runoff election is only a little more than 3 weeks away. Coming up next, our voice of the voter says her work to stay alive is more than a full-time job. Why she's keeping a close eye on Washington. Well, this week, our voice of the voter takes us to Decatur, where we meet with Emily Patel. She's a business owner and graduate of Emory Law, who is now in and out of the hospital, just trying to stay alive.
I was born and raised in Boston, and when I was in high school, my family moved down to Atlanta. My mom and dad have always owned a business or two or three. Through COVID, we closed a lot of businesses, and even now, businesses doing better, but it's been slow.
Now we're layering on top of what we're seeing in Washington right now in regards to your health benefits.
Absolutely. I've been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I've had Nutcracker syndrome, May-Thurner syndrome, Sjogren's. I spend multiple days a week going to the hospital for treatments and going to doctor's appointments and having home health care and skilled nursing and physical therapy and occupational therapy and you name it. I spend more than 40 hours a week maintaining just my health care and trying to stay alive.
Right now, taking care of your health is a full-time job.
It's more than a full-time job. I wish that I had a full-time job because I could go work for 40 hours, come home, and have a life. I spend more than 40 hours a week right now maintaining my health care to not have a life. I spend that time to be alive. Without the subsidies right now, I'm looking at my health care more than quadrupling for next year.
What would you say you're most concerned about in this moment?
Why our government can't negotiate in good faith. Disability doesn't see race, gender, color, age, nor do health issues and illnesses. They can happen to anyone at any time, for any reason.
What would you say you're most optimistic about right now?
Well, we had a really big win earlier this week. I'm hopeful that, that our representatives will start to represent their constituents and have the best interest of their constituents at the forefront and not the best interest of their political donors.
Our thanks to Emily for that conversation. She is very supportive of Democrats and their push for those ACA healthcare extensions. Of course, Republicans say they want to pass a bill right now and then talk about healthcare down the road. So just a little context there.
This is a conversation that continues to happen in Washington and right here in Georgia. Thank you all so much for being with us today. We will see you right back here next week, Sunday at 11, for another edition of the Georgia Vote.